evening, beautiful people, and welcome back to In Conversation with Gustav, where it's a series where I interview people that I find very interesting and will also benefit you guys at home. And today I've got somebody who I've been admiring for a very long time, Marilise, she's an author of a book, Raw, as well as you've done a TED Talk. And Marilise is all about empowerment, finding your inner raw, and of course her journey that has led her. Actually, I get goosebumps as I say this, as I've been watching your TED Talk, and then we'll get to that. So stay tuned, as we unravel her journey and how she can help you guys at home, find your inner raw. And actually, again, as I say that inner raw, I get goosebumps all over my body because I think it's such an important thing. Marilise, welcome to the pink chairs.
Thank you so much. I'm so honoured. Thank you for having me, Gustav.
You are very welcome. So Marilise, let's get into the deep side. So obviously you've got your book. Yes. Where can people buy this book if they want to read your story?
So it's on Amazon, and but I mean, maybe I'll tell you a little bit about how it all came about.
Yes, please.
Right? Because this is really, I always say to people, so I have my own business today. I'm an accidental entrepreneur. It was never part of the plan. But I spent 20 years grafting away in the corporate world and, built myself up, got quite successful. But of course, my definition of success was all related to work success.
Right.
And I did unfortunately find myself in a situation where I got quite senior and I was working with a very bullish man who is the bully in my book. But really it's a story about, realizing that this man may have bullied me, but I probably was the one bullying myself. And that's why the title of the book is How to Tame the Bully Inside and Out. And we talk about inner raw.
Yes.
And it's all about finding that, silencing that inner bully and finding that inner raw. So 4 years later, I've done a ton of, personal healing, obviously holding the mirror up and getting really honest with myself about my life and what I love my life to look like, who I would love to become. So I ask myself those questions every day now, but it's that sort of journey which is so beautiful, and I'm so honored to be able to share that with people and to help people along the way.
Fantastic. And so obviously I've watched your TED Talk to I basically can rehearse it myself.
Brilliant.
And and in the TED Talk I find when you start talking about finding your inner raw, and especially when you were a child, when you mentioned the first time where you found your inner raw. Actually, just before we go on, for the TED Talk, can you just tell us the name? How can people find you on the TED Talk?
So the TED Talk, the title of the TED Talk is Have You Found Your Raw? ? So it is really Marilise de Villiers. It's on YouTube. So yeah, just type in Have You Found Your Raw? And then it should come up.
And also, then they recommend Brené Brown. Is it
Brené Brown?
Yes, of course. So I've been watching her, which to be in the same league as her, that is fantastic. But anyway, so coming back to finding your raw. So obviously, you go through, in the TED Talk about the boardroom, and like you've just said, also when you find your first inner raw. How have you found writing this book? How has that helped you heal and deal with the things in everyday life moving forward?
So I think it is about, so for 40 years I've put the trauma over my lifetime into boxes. So you kind of put it away in a little box and you think it's going to go away. So you never really work through it, you kind of deny it.
Right.
And so the trauma I'm describing here is sexual abuse as a very young girl, and understanding at the age of 12, that I was sexually abused because I was eight at the time when it happened, so I couldn't really understand what was happening to me. But I realized there and then, it was on a Saturday afternoon, that my sister, my younger sister, who was 8 years at the time, so the age I was when it happened to me, I understood for the first time what was happening. Yeah. And so I literally dropped everything, and unfortunately she was at his house that afternoon. So I dropped everything, I ran straight to his house, and I sort of rescued her. But I sort of say in my TED talk and I say in my book that was the very first time I roared, because I told this man that we are going home now. And he even begged me to allow my sister to stay. And I just said, no, we are going home now. So I always describe that as my very first roar. Now, of course, I didn't know 4 years ago when I left my corporate job with my tail between my legs, I didn't make the connection between the workplace abuse. So I say as well that abuse is abuse, full stop.
Yes.
So you don't get a worse case or a lesser case of abuse. Verbal abuse, I always say the invisible scars cut deep. So the emotional abuse, the physical abuse, they're all scars, and I put them all under the same umbrella. They're all the same thing, and I felt the same emotions. The sexual abuse and the emotional abuse, it's the same emotions.
Because it all affects your confidence.
It does. So I think what I've done and the healing journey has been very much about me confronting it. As I say, holding that mirror up, getting honest with myself, not necessarily liking the answers, but being prepared to change and being prepared to improve myself, to better myself, to work through these things, and getting comfortable with, we all have a story, we all have a unique story. And I think this is what makes me so excited about where I am today, where you are today, because I'm watching your journey and I'm so excited for you and all the amazing things that you are doing. But we're all born with a unique purpose, a unique calling on our lives. And it's so important to tap into that. And so not to try and become another Brené Brown or, a Tony Robbins or a Dean Graziosi, but actually to recognize that, nobody can do you as well as you can do you.
Of course, because everybody else is taken.
Brilliant. And I think that, and I see that in you every day. Every time I interact with you, every time I see you, I see that authenticity and that, person that just absolutely show up as Gustav every single day. And that's what I'm excited about, because I'm allowing myself and giving myself more permission to step into this authentic person that I am and what I'm meant to do here and who I'm meant to become.
And with your, so in your TED Talk, obviously you break down your program. So tell me a little bit more about, let's say, number one, who is the person that will, because obviously you do a lot of corporate things, but for the people at home, if there's somebody who has, in a personal capacity, who wants to use your services, what type of person would come and approach you, number one? And then number two, how would you go about, because I remember you broke your program into 3 stages. Tell us a little about that. How do you go about, because to me, it's when I saw it on the screen, I thought to myself, oh wow, I can relate to all those things. So run us through a little bit. How do you go about it?
Yeah, so it's a very holistic approach, and it is very much, it's appropriate to you or for you if you feel stuck, if you know there's more to life, you have this feeling inside you that there's more out there, but you don't quite know how to go for it, how to get it, and you're typically not feeling like, I discovered or created, or I would say the raw blueprint. It's called the raw blueprint, and I'll go through the steps in a moment. But I always say that's my gift. That was the unique gift that was given to me to share with the world. So it's weird. I don't want to get all weird on you guys, but it's that sort of, I had to invite that framework and receive that framework in order to share it. I always say your message is for you first, and then it's for others. So it was essentially how I turned my life around. And the 4 stages are, it's all about finding your authentic purpose. So getting clarity on exactly what I said earlier about your calling, your unique calling, your desires, your passions, who you are, who you want to become. Then winning the inner game. So that's so much about your mindset and, winning or mastering your mindset. Because at the end of the day, our self-talk can be really, really rude sometimes. I often say, I speak to myself. I wouldn't dare speaking to other people the way I speak to myself sometimes. Especially when it comes to my physical appearance. You're always criticizing yourself. And I'm like, no. You've got to be kind to yourself. You have to learn that empowering self-talk so that you're actually kind to yourself. You have that self-compassion. So it's all about winning the inner game, your thoughts and your feelings. Then thirdly, it's about winning the outer game. So that's your words and your actions. And for me, that shows up in how you generate energy, how you show up as the vibrant, fully alive person every day to show up as the best version of you. And you've got to generate energy. You're not going to, have the energy. You've got to generate the energy. So that's all about your words and your actions and your health habits, how you invest in your food and your nutrition, your exercise and all that sort of good stuff. So that's the third element. And then, of course, at the heart of the blueprint is Roar, which is all about finding your unique voice and unleashing your unique voice.
The fabulosity.
Absolutely. And then Roar is also a 4-step process, because what I realize is that there's a science, there's a method, there's a process for having a difficult conversation or a courageous conversation. So Roar stands for recognize, observe, assert, and redirect. And you can follow those 4 steps in any difficult interaction with another person, and have a productive conversation, have an empowering conversation.
So explain that to me.
Okay.
If you so those 4 steps, like we need to have a difficult conversation.
Yes.
How would
Yes.
you kind of, because I see people who have, I'll be honest with you, even though I'm not scared of conflict, I don't particularly like it.
Yeah.
It's something that I need to really psych myself up for. Where I look at my partner Steve, he is so good because I don't know what he does, but he just takes away the emotion, and it's just very factual, very straight, very calm. So with your 4-step program, how would you coach me to have the difficult conversation?
So, I mean, you mentioned Steve. I have one of those as well at home.
Right.
Mine is exactly the same, and I'm always like, I wish I was more like that.
Yeah.
Because
That's what I think all the time.
I'm an emotional being, right? So I react instead of respond.
Yes.
So I think what they do is they respond.
Yeah.
They take a moment, they take a breath, they take the emotion out of it, and they respond. Which is what you and I do. Is we don't take that moment. It's impulsive and
it's
we
fast.
react. It's really fast, right?
Yeah.
So the whole point about recognize and observe. So that's all the inner game stuff.
Right.
So you're having a conversation with me. You're having a go at me. And I'm recognizing and observing what you're doing, right? So I'm not reacting straight away. I'm actually recognizing.
I'm being triggered.
Yes. And I'm like observing because I want to listen to what you're saying and I want to self-regulate.
Right.
Because I want to make sure that I'm not allowing you to deflect your emotions on me. I'm not going to catch that hot potato, right? You're throwing me a hot potato, but I have to make sure I don't catch that hot potato, okay? So I have to be really good at listening, maintaining eye contact, and breathing and staying calm, which is hard, right? It's a technique, it's a skill. Exactly. So that comes with practice, right? But it's often very difficult depending on the context as well. So when it's a partner, when it's a husband or a wife or a life partner, it's so easy because they trigger you just like that. Or when it's a mum or a dad, they just trigger you like that, right? Whereas it's probably easier to do it in a more formal, in a corporate setting. But of course, then you've got the power-hungry individuals who are abusing their positions of power as well. So you've got to deal with that dynamic. And then people are less likely to speak up because they don't feel psychologically safe to speak up. But anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But then if you think about the assert and the redirect, so the last 2 letters, that's all about your outer game. That's all about how you respond.
Okay.
And when you're assertive when you respond, you have a very healthy boundary.
Yeah.
Okay, so you know what your rights are, and you respect the rights of the other person. And I think this is what Steve and Heine gets really right. They have that healthy boundary, and they know when someone oversteps that boundary or not. And it's learning that skill. Whereas when someone oversteps that boundary, where you have actually the ability to actually assert and to say, "Hang on, what the hell's going on here?" But of course, the way that you respond, so you're fully within your right to ask a question. So for all the women out there, you don't always have to be ready with an answer. we always feel like we've got to be able to answer everybody's questions. No. If you don't know the answer, if you need more information, ask a question.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. It's so basic, it's so simple, but often we get caught off guard, and then someone asks us a question, or they insult us, or they attack us, and all we think is we've got to actually give an answer. We've got to like please and explain. Like, you know, I'm a recovering people pleaser. Let's just put it out there. So it's that sort of ability to be on your feet, thinking on your feet in the moment, and responding with a question, being really assertive, being really confident.
Right.
That someone has just behaved inappropriately. There's no reason why you should take their emotion onto you.
Right.
And it takes literally a moment to breathe and to just gather yourself and to self-regulate, and then to respond, or you know, to assert your side of the fence. And then, of course, the redirect is all about redirecting the conversation so that you reach a productive outcome.
Right.
So it's beneficial to you and to me. So it's not necessarily, it could be, if it's a difficult conversation, it could be that neither of us wanted the outcome, but it's the best outcome at that particular point for both of us. And sometimes it could be a case of agreeing to disagree.
Yeah.
But at least you finish it at a point where it's actually a productive conversation, and both people feel good about the interaction.
Mm.
The worst thing is to go away, to go to bed tonight, and to think about that conversation you had with someone in the office today, and you feel hurt, or that person feel hurt, and it's just.
But you know, something you said earlier, which I think resonates with me, is when you said, you know, I think I can say both of us, we are hot-blooded South Africans, and but I think, you know, having the ability to actually, if you don't know, to either say, I need a moment, and do that. Because Steve and I, when maybe it's a bit sharing too much for live TV, but anyway, I'm going to share anyway. You know, obviously, like any relationship, we've had our ups and downs, and we've learned, you know, that communication is not my best quality or my strength. Where with his it is, because I'm very fast to respond, and I don't take the moment. Where now, when I feel I'm getting triggered, I will just say, I just need a bit of time out. And it just takes me 5 or 10 minutes that I can just gather myself. And the same thing with asking questions, because obviously your background for, and we've had this discussion many times, is females in technology, which is, of course, a super male-driven environment. And I see my clients, you know, who are in male-driven environments, they don't feel that they can have the choice of saying, excuse me, I would like to either ask a question or give me the opportunity to, I don't know, let me, so they're on their toes the whole time, and when they don't fire at full cylinders, I think, you know, it really rattles people. And I see that especially with women of a certain age. Do I dare say that? I think, you know, 45, like late 40s, 50s. I think 50s is a very difficult time for women, and I think, you know, women that stage, you know, I love women, so I think that's when you should be in your power completely.
Yes, 100%. And it is about embracing that feminine power. So what happens, I think, with women, and it happened to me, is that you feel like you have to become like a man in order to survive in a man's world. And then you lose that unique ability, that power, that unique feminine power that you have. So a lot of my work is centered around embracing that feminine power. And it's not a male or a female thing. I'm not suggesting it's gender.
Yeah, but we all have male and female.
We all have male and female energy, and it's about having that really good mix of male and female energy, and having that mutual respect. Now, I have seen organizations that get this balance right beautifully, and then it works, and you get really high performance. You see those organizations perform really, really well. And then you see the other side of the coin where it's toxic, and those organizations really struggle. So there's absolutely a direct correlation about, you know, embracing that diversity, that inclusivity, in terms of high performance and in terms of actually delivering results. Yeah, so I think, you know, women, I think it's difficult because you often in a situation, and again, I find myself where I'm the only woman in the room, so 1 out of 10 people in the room, and that makes it hard because you feel alone. And some advice that I've been giving to women, and it's getting better. It is getting better, but I mean, it's slow, especially in cybersecurity where I work. What I say to these women is there's always a couple of men in the room that you can use as allies, and utilize them, take them into your trust, you know, share with them, being honest and being vulnerable. You know, courage and vulnerability sit kind of hand in hand, right? You can't be courageous without being vulnerable. And being honest with them about feeling insecure or about having a difficult challenge, and bring them into your world, you know, share the load, ask for help. We are so rubbish at asking for help.
Yeah, I think, you know, especially because I think, you know, people see asking for help as a almost like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Inability to perform. Incompetence, there, that's the word.
Yeah.
And we've got, it's so funny now because we look at our junior stylist, and actually someone who's now a senior stylist in the salon, you know, when she started working with us, you know, she had the skill to do colour but not the knowledge yet.
Yeah.
And what we've started doing from very, very early on is we've never had a problem for one stylist to call another stylist to say, what do you think? And I do it, you know, Gavin does it, we all still interact with one another like that. And it's actually created such a lovely bond because there's no almost ego involved. We all have, you can either take my opinion or leave it, but that vulnerability in it, you know, actually gives power.
Yes, and you've made it safe for people to actually be honest, be vulnerable. And I think that's where psychological safety comes in, and especially in organizations, because I do a lot of my work in the corporate space, and a lot of my work is about encouraging people to speak up, to roar, because it is about, especially in cybersecurity, it is about spotting problems. It's about acknowledging when there's a mistake or there's a potential issue, and to raise your hand and say, you know, I've made a mistake, or I can see a potential issue. So we often say to people, if you suspect it, report it, tell us, you know. And it's such an important behaviour in our world that we're driving, and I think it's true across all different disciplines, not just cybersecurity. But if leaders, and as a leader you've created that safe space for your staff to actually call things out, if leaders don't create that safe space, then people are never going to speak up, and people are going to be afraid to fail, because you also want to create an environment where it's safe for people to make mistakes, because you learn from them. And I always say, you know, that you can fail fast. And I mean, I don't really think failure is a thing, actually. Everything is learning anyway. But it is that opportunity for people to learn by doing, by failing fast, essentially.
We see, so when I was quite young, my dad said to me, you know, write everything down that for the people you work with, write down the things you love and hate about what you do, how they treat you, how they speak to you, all information. And I have done that, and it's quite interesting because when I've opened up the salon, you learn how to either do something or you learn how to not do something. And I think, you know, so it is what you say, everything, it is never failure. Yes, you know, I probably could have done something better, but by doing it like that, I've learned that actually there's different paths you can to get to.
100%, and I love that you say that, because I always say to people that I had to learn. Again, I'm a recovering perfectionist as well. Recovering perfectionist. But what I've had to learn is that actually perfection is an illusion, because my standard of perfect or my idea of perfect is not your idea of perfect. So we all have different standards. So what is perfect anyway? So I've had to learn, and especially over the last couple of years, I've really had to learn, especially with stepping into the role of business owner. I had to learn to take messy action, to just kind of have a go, and to experiment, and to know I'm probably not going to get it right the first time, but that's okay, because what happens is you learn, and the quicker you do things and the quicker you learn, the faster you excel and
course.
accelerate your learning and your progression. And I wish more people can embrace that, because I think there is still that sort of, if I don't know all the steps, I'm not going to actually take the first step, and then I procrastinate.
Yeah.
But you only ever know the first step. You only ever have to know the first step, right?
Yeah, of course. You just need to take the first step.
And you have to take, that's the thing.
I actually think that's the most difficult thing. Once you've taken the first step, you know, it is you and I spoke about this, you know, I'm reading a book that you've also read called Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, you know, and the body is so comfortable with what we do, you know, that taking that first step is the hardest, because, you know, if you can't overcome that, I wouldn't call it laziness, but that thing that holds you back. But once you've done the first step, you think that was difficult, but actually it was okay, and then it moves on. So, last question before we wrap this up: what advice would you? So I know obviously you deal with corporations and big businesses, but also for a lot of females, because I think, you know, bullying is across the board. You know, we see it everywhere. I've experienced it. I think most of us have experienced it somewhere. What advice would you have for male or female that is in a workplace where, how do they firstly identify? Because I think, you know, once we're in being bullied, we don't always have it's like beaten house. So wife syndrome. You know, she gets beaten, she goes back. It's that whole toxic relationship. But how do you acknowledge it? And what advice would you give to somebody? What steps would you encourage them to take?
Yeah, so I think, I mean, I can relate so much with everything you're saying, because in my situation, I mean, I was bullied for a period of three to 4 years. So. And I think for 2 of those 4 years, I knew I had to get out, but I still couldn't get out because I still, you know, had this limiting belief, you know, that there was nothing better out there for me. So I think there's a lot to do about self-limiting beliefs and self-doubt. So, but that's not helpful advice for anybody that's in that particular situation. So I think. For me, at the end of the day, it is a case of, and I just want to say, and I say this in my TED talk as well, the harder the bully pushed me, the harder I pushed myself. So it's that ability to recognize, what is your behavior doing? What are you doing? You know, so spot the bully, which would be my first step. And actually that's one of the chapters in my book. And actually I wrote a whole section around understanding narcissism. Because once you understand how these people operate, how they think, how they like maneuver and how they manipulate, and you realize you can give it a label, it's actually really much easier to spot.
Right.
But it's spotting the bully, but also spotting the inner bully. So that's where people, I think, just, and that's what I did for a long time, is just kind of deny it, put the problem in a box, because I couldn't actually face the reality of putting the mirror up, holding the mirror up, having a look in the mirror and getting really honest with myself. So the first step definitely is to get honest. And if you realize you're in a tough spot and you're in a really difficult situation, then you've got to do something about it. You've got to get out of the situation, or you've got to find a way to continue with this job, but actually to maybe change roles or escalate it so that they deal with the individual. But you know, that comes with its own challenges. So it's such a difficult question to answer, but what I would say is the things that I did, the 3 things that I did which really helped me, was 1, to get honest,
Right.
and then to face it, and that took me 2 years. Right. It's a process of 2 years and a lot of self-abuse in the process.
Well, because it's basically how I view what you say. It's all relationships.
Yes.
And it is basically moving out of a very bad relationships. You know, and how many times have we had a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a husband that, you know, we've emotionally left a long time ago, but it takes very long to get out of that to.
And some people never leave. and
sadly.
they're stuck in that cage forever. And I think, you know, that would be my hope for everybody, is that you would find the inner strength and the courage to face the situation, to do something about it. So get honest, get clear. So it's really critically asking yourself, what do you want?
Yeah.
What do I want? And these days,
But do you think a lot of people can actually answer that question?
people can tell you what they don't want.
Yes.
But they
Totally.
can't tell you what they want. So what I say to people, okay, so if you know what you don't want, start there. Start where you are, but at least then, at some point, look at that list and start putting it into, but what do I actually want? Yeah. So you start where you're at, but I'm at a point now where I'm not just asking myself, what do I want? I'm actually asking myself, what would I love? Because now it feels expansive, and it feels like, okay, now I can actually live into something bigger.
Yeah.
And that excites me, okay? So get honest, get clear, and then get help.
Yeah.
So few of us can do this on our own. If one of the very first things that I did was to decide to work with Colette, which is also a mutual friend,
Yes.
which we love dearly.
Colette's going to be on the pink chair as well. It's tough to nail her down. If you're watching this, you know, we are trying.
You're next.
You are
But
next.
anyway, so she's an amazing health and transformational coach, and she's literally working with her intensively for 4 months after I left, was just saved my life.
Because listen, I think it is like when you've been in a bullying situation in your work life, you need therapy, you know, to kind of get all of that. So you need to have the people around you to actually hold you and guide you and give you that security. Yes, you know, it's not heartbreak like, oh my God, my partner's left me, but it is broken, you know, and to how to fix that and build up your self-confidence, which I think is probably the hardest thing to do, you know, to kind of get it out.
Yeah, and it's true, because I started seeing a psychologist before I left, but then obviously the bully demoted me in front of my team, so I kind of left very quickly with my tail between my legs. So that sort of psychology counselor, it was a counselor, that just died because I was just like, I'm not going to carry on within a work context working with these people. So so that was sort of where I sort of took charge of my own destiny. And I think, someone then said to me, but you have PTSD, and I'm like,
I can see that.
well, exactly, but it's also, it's such a foreign concept. You think about PTSD as something, that people get when they see someone die.
But it is, and I think you see it with the way people behave. Definitely.
Anyway, so that was a bit of a shock. But of course, I was already in that sort of, luckily, I think genuinely focusing on my physical health and my mental health and my nutrition has really, really, it just catapulted me, really helped me get out of that funk, really get out of that funk. So I think at the end of the day, it's just thinking about how, where you are, meeting yourself where you're at, and ultimately about kindness to yourself.
I think kindness is, we'll end on that note, but I think kindness to yourself is something which we all, and I put myself in there, learning. My coach, a mentor, was constantly telling me, put away the samurai sword and just be kind. And you think going to the spa is kind, but it is that emotional kindness you need to have. With that said, beautiful people, thank you for joining us. And Marilise has very kindly given us 3 books.
3 copies of my book.
3 copies of a book signed, which we would love to give out to 3 lucky people. All you have to do is send us a DM, and the first 3 DMs, we would love to give this to you, and send us your email or address, or we'll come and collect them into the salon. We'll get in touch with you. I think, it was a great honour sitting in. There's so many more questions that I could ask, and we've had many times sitting either at the salon or and talking about just so much more that I know you are passionate about. So if you guys do have any questions, Marilise, we have shared her stuff on our social media. She's also in our newsletter, So if you've got any questions or you want to use her in your corporation or want to see her personally, I would highly recommend her as a valuable person to have in your corner. So I want to thank you, Marilise, for coming and sitting in the pink chairs with me. And I hope you guys found this informative as much as I have. And if there are people, I think mental health and bullying is a big thing. And maybe we'll get Marilise back, we can talk more about this and the steps you can take at home or at work to make you feel comfortable to actually look after yourself first, because I think that's the most important.
Exactly.
So thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks everyone, take care.
Bye.
Bye.